Final four teams are left standing in the NBA playoffs. So, what can the Miami Heat learn from them? The Pacers advance to take on the Celtics, but could that have been Miami instead? Does the Heat lack the size to be a top team? And how can the Heat take advantage of league wide parity? We answer this and much more in today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, you are Locked On Heat, your everyday podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day, Monday to Friday. I'm Wes Goldberg, editor at allyoucanheat.com, here with David Ramil. Both of us credentialed Heat media members, excited about today's show. It's brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. We've got a what-if scenario that I want to ask you about later on, David, but let's start with Sunday's Game 7s. The Pacers go into MSG, have one of the great Game 7 shooting performances of all time. Now they are advancing to the Eastern Conference Finals to play the Celtics. On the West Coast, the Timberwolves go into Denver. They knock off the Nuggets. They're going to advance to the Western Conference Finals to play the Mavericks. I thought we could tie all of this stuff back to the Heat in a few different ways. But is there something that the Heat can learn from the Final Four teams that jumps out to you?
If there's one thing that kind of stood out to me is the difference in size across these rosters. You look specifically at Minnesota and the fact that they were able to roll out their 3 7-footer lineup, between Karl Anthony Towns and Naz Reid, who had a phenomenal game. And I know we had talked last year of him about him being a free agent that Miami might potentially look at. Of course, he wasn't really financially available from Miami, but just consider what that front line would have been like with him playing alongside Bam Adebayo. And then, of course, you've got Rudy Gobert. I know Rudy is always going to get some criticism. It's swung almost to the exact opposite end now, where I think he's almost underrated in terms of what he can bring defensively. I still prefer Bam overall in terms of what he brings defensively, sure. But Rudy's a hell of a player, and you can't take that away from him.
And Cat had a tremendous playoffs and a tremendous series.
Yeah, absolutely. He was great. I had a crucial dunk down the stretch. But you look at Miami and you look at their roster right now is currently comprised. And as I mentioned to you before we started recording, they've got 4 centers under contract, and yet really they don't have any. This is kind of paraphrasing, Pat Riley from a couple of years ago saying there are problems and there are none. Well, there are centers and there are none. And Miami has none right now because you've got Orlando Robinson, who's basically unplayable at this point in his career. Thomas Bryant, who can't seem to figure out anything on defense. You got Kevin Love, who's playing backup center and probably shouldn't, and he's been more valuable than you might expect. And he probably shouldn't even be playing this role for Miami or maybe even for any other team. And Bam Adebayo, of course, still somewhat undersized, still managing to hold his own as a center, but probably needing to slide down to the 4 in order to compete with some of these bigger teams. And so you look at what Miami needs in order to replicate the success of some of these teams currently left in the playoffs. You've got a 2-man rotation with Derek Lively in Dallas.
I'm glad you brought up Dallas because that was sort of the thing that took them over the top, right? You've got Luka banging the table, asking his front office, get me a 7-foot rim rolling center. Yeah. That's what I need. Yeah. Enough with the Maxi Klebers and the Dwight Powells. Get me a guy who could dunk the ball. Get me some size. Get me a target. And they said, great. Then they make that trade on draft night. They go get Derek Lively. They make the trade deadline deal to add Gafford. And then on top of that, they said, the Grant Williams thing isn't working. This was kind of a bust for us. We're going to swap him out for a better version of Grant Williams and went out and got P.J. Washington, who has had an incredible series for Dallas.
Have you been impressed by PJ? Because I know you were down on PJ when we were talking about him as a trade target for Charlotte.
I think he is a great fit for Dallas. I don't think he would have been as good a fit for Miami because Dallas has legit 7-footers where if you have a PJ Washington and a Bam, you're still undersized in that front court, right? Yes. And so, but I've been PJ Washington being a 16-game player, to use the Draymond Green terminology, did not have that on my bingo card. Did not see that coming, right? He's been awesome. So to your point, you've got Minnesota doubling
playoff
down.
Success. This is his first taste of the playoffs.
Yeah, he's never been in the playoffs. Maybe early with one of those 500 Charlotte teams, but he's never won a playoff series, and
that's for sure.
So you've got Minnesota making their all-in move on size a couple years ago. You've got Dallas going big. You've got Indiana, they already had Miles Turner. They add Pascal Siakam to that front line, so they're kind of going big on size too. And then like the Celtics, they make their big thing going out and getting Kristaps Porzingis this last summer, even though he wasn't a major factor in their playoff run. Not that they needed him. So the size thing is an interesting conversation. I think that's certainly part of it, and I think if the Heat are looking around the rest of the league and saying, okay, what's our path to the finals realistically look like? It's going to involve probably needing some more size in some way, shape, or form. Now, that might not look like trading a first-round pick for Daniel Gafford or a type like that, or going out and making a huge swing to add a Rudy Gobert, somebody that's going to have to play next to Bam in that front court, like for, to open and close games. But adding somebody who is a legitimate, to your point, David, a real center who can get rotation minutes, starting or not, but just having that optionality, I think, would be really huge for Miami next season.
That's exactly the point. You talk about, you hear Spo long enough, and he likes the options available on his roster. And up to this point, it's been about having guys that can defend 1 through 4, maybe, and then kind of seeing what you can do at the 5. And of course, the constant switching defense and everything else. And they've used Caleb Martin in all sorts of different roles that he's probably not exactly qualified for.
Yeah, you know me. I've long said that this team, we mistake versatility for a lack of speciality. And to me, this was not as a versatile team as Eric Spoelstra talked about. It was just a team that lacked in specialties.
So, I've asked him before about the depth of this team, and not just this iteration, but even past iterations. And even when he was talking about players like Kelly Olynyk and guys like that, you just want that kind of versatility, the optionality to do different things, to have guys that can bring the ball up and create options from the perimeter and defensively to be able to guard and protect the paint. Hassan Whiteside was the last maybe true center that they had on this roster, and I hate saying that, and yet he was limited in his own regard. So it's not just about having a specific rim protector unless you have the right team built around that rim protector, and I don't know that Miami has the roster currently constructed for that, but you just need guys that can do different things and create different options so that you're not limited. You're not just constantly switching and exhausted by the end of the games and trying to muster some sort of offense, because you're sacrificing so much energy on the defensive end.
So that Bam could stay healthy by the end. Like he talked about how exhausted he was by game 2 of the NBA Finals last year. He was like, his body is breaking down because he's constantly have to bang with these 7-footers who are just bigger and stronger than him,
or picking up guards in the perimeter. Switching 1 through 5 is what he does better than anybody.
And sometimes doing it all on one position. It takes a lot of time,
right? Yes.
So Bam, if he's the franchise cornerstone, he's the guy that you have to build everything around. And I do think if Bam is your cornerstone, the best way to build around him is with shooting and switching defenders. And that's not necessarily a big lumbering 7-footer, but to have that as an option, even coming off the bench or to start the first 5 minutes or something. The problem is that if you're built around Bam and Jimmy Butler, there's not enough floor spacing. And you really can't survive with 3 non-shooters in today's NBA, regardless of how big you are. And so, and I know that there's, Bam's starting to incorporate the 3-point shot. And Jimmy experimented with it a little bit. Like, all right, like call me when defenders actually start closing out on those guys. Like it's kind of, it's nice when they should keep doing it. I'm not saying don't, but keep doing it. But it's going to take a while until defenses actually treat Bam like a corner 3-point shooter. Like they're not going to do that for probably a few years, if we're being honest. And so, if at all, and so you need and so now this player becomes a lot harder to find. And that's the problem with the roster construction, is when you have 2 guys who have to be in your starting and closing lineup, in Jimmy and Bam, who are not floor spacers at all, then the other 3 guys have to be. And we've actually seen Eric Spoelstra lean into that more and more over the last couple of years. I got a question about a mailbag I did on All You Can Heat last week about, is this the year we finally see Spo go away from small ball? And I'm like, I think Spo would love to go away from small ball. But he knows the issue that I'm talking about here, is that you need shooters around Bam and Jimmy, and the better shooters tend to be smaller players. And it's really hard to go get guys like Karl Anthony Towns, who are 7 feet tall and legitimate floor spacers that opponents close out on, So it's going to be hard to do that.
I think even of Miami's limited options, I obviously, you can't expect Kevin Love to change too much. But am I wrong in thinking that Thomas Bryant might evolve still, even at this point in his career? Like, he's still much younger than a lot of people expect. 26. He's an older veteran. Yeah, he's 26. He can still change his game, and he has at least a 3-point spacing ability, although we didn't really see much of that this past season. Can he evolve to the point where he can be a playable center next to Bam? And I know that's been a question. Aside from that, if you're looking at a trade with the Cleveland Cavaliers, maybe they're looking in the wrong direction with Donovan Mitchell. Maybe they should be trying to get a guy like Jared Allen. Could he be playable alongside Bam Adebayo? These are questions I'm sure that we'll have more answers for as a postseason
Mark
or
Stein
the offseason
reporting that Jared Allen is expected to be traded, or they're going to explore trading him kind of no matter what. And Clint Capella is another name that's out there. Neither of those guys are shooters, though. Right. And if you're going to pay them $20 million a year, which is what they're making, can you afford to bring them off the bench? So that, to me, I would almost say, I think it's fun to kind of go after the big names and like, wow, Clint Capella, Jared Allen, like these guys who we're familiar with. But to me, it's just maybe find a way to trim your payroll a little bit, unlock the ability to use the mid-level exception, even the smaller one, the $5-6 million one, and maybe just use it on, or go find a minimum like guy or something. But again, I guess they've tried that with Thomas Bryant. They've tried it with the minimum guys. Maybe a little bit of a chunkier, like mid-level salary makes a little bit more sense, like a Jonas Valanciunas or something like that, who you don't need to start him. He doesn't have to close games for you, but he can at least be an actual player for you in certain situations. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know that name exists right now, and I don't know that even in the draft, I think the draft you might find some options, but even still, what names are available? And I know we'll get later into this this week, but even those guys, they're not ready to just go in right away. Like Derek Lively, again, as a rim roller, is a great fit in Dallas, and he provided a hell of a spark earlier in the season when I don't think a lot of people expected it to be that impactful. No. And a lot of that has to do with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. And like Miami doesn't have either of those guys on the roster, not even somebody who can approximate that. So you're still kind of stuck at square one and trying to find the right fit. And look, even if you look at, I love Jared Allen. I love what he brings to the table, and he might work in Miami. But what works in Minnesota between Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns is because you've got Karl Anthony Towns, who's a great scorer from the perimeter. Bam is not that. So you can't play Bam and Allen together unless Bam evolves his game completely and becomes a three-point shooting threat next season. I don't think we're going to be quite there yet.
What else can we learn from these Final Four teams? Plus, are the way these playoffs playing out a good sign for the Heat next season? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Yahoo Finance. When it comes to your financial future, you think you've done it all. You've saved, you've researched, you've invested all that you can. But now you need to take those investments to the next level by using what every financial great uses. That's Yahoo Finance. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor just looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data you need in one place. They're the number1 finance destination, providing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, original editorial perspectives, analyst ratings, independent research, customizable charts, and much, much more. Securely link your brokerage accounts for a unified view of your wealth, including 401k and whatever other investments you might have. A comprehensive perspective is what sets apart great investors, and it's how Yahoo Finance ensures you have the insight to look at your wealth in its entirety. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor. That's YahooFinance.com, the #1 financial destination, YahooFinance.com. That's YahooFinance.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Having a little problem with my read here. In any case, Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats, and you watch the winnings roll in. And it's so easy to use. Prize Picks is so simple. You can make your picks and submit an entry in less than 60 seconds. Prize Picks even offers insurance, injury insurance, so that if your entries stay in play, even if one of your players gets hurt, like for basketball games, you've got a player who exits a game in the first half, kind of like OG Anunoby in the Knicks game yesterday, and does not return to second, Prize Picks will have your back and not count that as a loss. Prize Picks now offers Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account this basketball season. Remember, prizepicks.com. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA, and you get a first deposit match of up to $100. That's downloading the app. Make sure you go to and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. We'll be right back.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. Everydayers, make sure you tune in later this week. We got some fun episodes for you coming up. We're going to be talking to Chris Manning from Locked On Cavs about a potential Donovan Mitchell trade. We're also going to start our Blue Notebook series, which we're really excited about, breaking down different draft prospects, and we're going to be starting with which draft prospects might be the best fit with Bam Adebayo, like we were just talking about before, David. But a couple other things that I want to hit on in terms of not only like the size, and I do think it's a great point, and I'm glad we talked about that, but also you look at health and how important it is for all the teams that got here. The Pacers were healthier than the Knicks, right? Like the Timberwolves are supremely healthy. And the big reason why the Timberwolves did not challenge Denver probably more last season, there are a lot of reasons, but they were beat up in that series against the Timberwolves or against the Nuggets last year. They're healthy this time, and you see what kind of happened there. Dallas is very healthy. You know, the Celtics outside of Kristaps Porzingis have been healthy all year and are very healthy, and honestly didn't really need Kristaps to make it this far into the Eastern Conference Finals.
Right.
The Heat obviously were not healthy all year, so I do think health is a big part of it. Now, part of that is just getting lucky. There's certainly an element of that, but part of it too is just how your roster is constructed and how young it is and how big it is. Like bigger, younger players tend to not get hurt as much as smaller, older players, and Miami is primarily a small and or older roster. So I do think that there's some things that they have to change there. Pat Riley spent a big part of his end of season press conference talking about changes that they could make to get healthier. But besides that, you also look at what these teams are. You've got a star from this next generation, or this or even current generation, I guess is they would argue it, between Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Halliburton, Jason Tatum, Luka Doncic, right? These are the guys. There is no LeBron. There is no Kevin Durant. There is no Steph Curry left. Like, these guys have been out for a long time, but this is the generation. And it feels like right now, like Bam Adebayo is part of that generation.
He is, but
Jimmy Butler is
tier
not.
below. Yes.
And he is a tier below. But that's the thing, right? He is a tier below these guys. And so you do want to maybe find a way to push. You have like somebody like Kyrie Irving, who is part of the Jimmy Butler generation, but he hitched his wagon to somebody of the new generation like Luka Doncic. And so you could do it. You can have both, but it feels like you definitely need that new generation guy because these are the guys who are ascending, and these players are only going to get better, while the Miami Heat are not necessarily in that position right now.
It was supposed to be Tyler Hero. It was supposed to be Tyler.
It was never really supposed to be Tyler Hero, but I think some people expected it to be Tyler Hero. But if we're being honest, it was never. You look at Tyler Hero, he was never going to be Anthony Edwards, man. Like, that was never going to happen.
No. That was, I mean, I think Edwards, and we talked about it before, the physicality and things that the way he's evolved is a hell of a shooter. Like, I mean, yeah, he struggled in game 7 for the most part, but over the course of the playoffs,
and defensively, what he can do, man.
That's
I mean, these are things that Tyler Hero was never going to accomplish. Jason Tatum is 6'8" with a standing reach he can jump or hit a shot over almost anybody. Even Luka Doncic physically is bigger and stronger than Tyler Hero is.
Do you think the Heat misjudged Tyler's ability to evolve defensively? Because I don't even know that Tyler's bad defensively. I think he's just overmatched, and he, as much effort as he gives, do you think they expected him to develop into at least a plus defender, and he just hasn't been able to reach that because of whatever physical limitations he has? I mean, I know I don't think
that the expectations from Miami were ever as high as maybe Heat fans had or thought they were. This guy was picked at the end of the lottery, basically in the middle of the first round. Right. Like, this is not somebody. Anthony Edwards was the number 1 pick. You have certain expectations with every draft slot. I don't know that. You look at Tyler Hero's physical limitations. I'm with you. I think he's a bad defender, but not because of a lack of effort. It's just inherent physical traits that he has, and so I think that those things have never changed.
Right.
You know, he's always been smaller. He's always had the negative wingspan. He's always these are always things that. So I don't think that the Heat ever expected him. I think they expected him to, hey, give more effort, maybe jump some passing lanes and do these things. And by the way, he does those things. I don't think that they're unhappy with that. And that's why, by the way, he closes a lot of games, is because they know that he's maximizing the limitations that he has. I don't know if they ever expected him to maybe be a little bit better, to find ways to get out of these traps a little bit more. I do think that the first round playoff series against Boston was a little sobering for everybody. But I don't know that the expectation was ever for him to be this. And that's why, by the way, they kept trying to trade him for a player who could be this. Right?
That's exactly right.
So that's part of it. The other thing here that we want to talk about is we're on our way to having a 6th different champion in the NBA in 6 years. We haven't seen this level of parity in forever in the NBA. When was the last time? Because it's been a very never, right? This is one of one. And Is that a good thing for Miami, do you think? Because the Heat were the dominant team in the Eastern Conference for the last 5 years. So you could also say, well, you could also see this level of parity and being like, well, is Miami's time over? And was that what this season was? Did this season, the way that it kind of fizzled out, mark the closing of something? Or is the parity a good thing because make a couple of the right tweaks, make a couple of good decisions, catch the right health and a little bit of luck, and they could be right back in it because things are just so wide open?
I was waffling on this because I'm not quite sure. You can't really tell whether or not Miami could take advantage of it without an accurate sample size. And I mean, they have been heretofore successful over the last 5 years of Jimmy Butler's stint in Miami, but not successful enough to win a title. But on the whole, I think when you look at Miami's approach, their versatility, the things that they can do, the way that they have their own unique style. And I think that helps. They've just been lacking that one player that can take them over the hump. If they had that at any point over the last 5 years, we could be talking about a team that might have at least won one title over that span. And I think when you look at the parity around the league or whatever it is that you want to call it, I think Miami could benefit from that because they can adapt, because they know how to have their own unique style and still enforce that and make that kind of imprint on the game in terms of how the physicality and the way they play. And if we're seeing anything in these playoffs, is an increased level of physicality that Miami embraces. So I think they'd be not necessarily flourishing, but I think they could take advantage of this parity that we're talking about. And I think at the same time, they know who they are. They're so firm in their commitment and their belief in what makes them better that I think it kind of lends itself to this idea that, it could be anybody. And it has been anybody over the last 6 years, now 7, and with this upcoming finals. So I think Miami can take advantage of this. I think Miami is kind of built for this. Yeah, to the overall question about whether or not Miami could be in this spot, yeah, sure. I mean, if they had been healthy and everything else like that, but even just with the overall approach into the roster build and everything else like that, like they could have won. They could have been able to take advantage of the Eastern Conference had they been able to get back Boston, had they met them later on in the playoff race, maybe even now instead of Indiana.
I want to touch on that here in a second, but before we get to that, like kind of just the whole part of like, look at Dallas. They were in the Western Conference Finals 2 years ago. They had the season from hell last year.
They tanked last year, yeah.
Right. I mean, they had to at the end, but yeah, but it didn't work out, and it was as disappointing a season as you could have. Even more disappointing than whatever this was for the Miami Heat. It was way more disappointing for a Dallas fan last year, coming off of a Western Conference Finals. You've got Luka Doncic, top 5 player in the NBA, and somehow that's your season. You missed the playoffs altogether. And you've got big questions about whether or not the Kyrie Irving thing worked out and all these things. But within 6 months, they make the right changes. They add a Gafford. They draft Lively. They go and trade for PJ Washington. They add guys like Dante Exum, Derek Jones Jr., they tweak all the roster around their tentpole stars, and they're right back into the Western Conference Finals. And if I'm Miami, that's the team I'm looking at. It's they had a gap year, a very disappointing year. They kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit in that year. It wasn't just luck that submarine that season, but there's a way to kind of fix it quickly and get back to where you were. And I do think that might be an opportunity for the Heat, but it's going to take wholesale changes. It's going to take real change, the way that you saw from Dallas. It's a recognition of this doesn't work anymore, even though it worked before. It no longer does work for us. What's going to work for us now? What do we need now?
Does Miami need to take a step back in terms of like whatever success they achieve next season and kind of punt next year in order to kind of retool and not rebuild necessarily, but do what Dallas did in terms of make those kind of larger wholesale changes in order to build this roster so that's much more complementary of each other and can achieve longer term
I don't think you need to take a step back. I think you could do what Dallas did and just accomplish it all in a summer. Or not in a summer, but an offseason into a trade deadline between.
Yeah, but they were able to make that acquisition for Kyrie last year, and that was their punt year, right? If you look at last season, and then they rebuilt or retooled.
I don't think that they thought that. I think when they traded for Kyrie, they were trying to make a push for the playoffs.
Right.
But it just didn't really work out. Yeah, but I don't know. Now they have their 2 stars, right? They've got Luka and Kyrie, but you could argue Miami has their 2 stars with Jimmy and Bam. It's just about putting the right pieces around those guys.
Right.
And Dallas was able to accomplish it between July and February. And I do think that the Heat could have that kind of stretch where it's okay, but it's going to take real tough decisions. The guys that you like, letting them walk away, making trades that you otherwise maybe not wouldn't have made that are a little bit difficult, and even like mortgaging the future a little bit, because that's what Dallas did. They traded future first-round picks for P.J. Washington and Daniel Gafford, and those trades were not slam dunks, critically acclaimed trades at the time, but it helped maximize the right now, and it feels like the Heat have not necessarily done that fully just yet. Are the way these playoffs played out a good sign for the Heat? Did the Heat let a great opportunity get away this season? We'll talk about that next year on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL. Go Cats. And FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. You think the Panthers could knock off the Rangers there?
Yeah, of course.
I think they can. Just of course. That's it, right?
I'm not predicting that. Like, of course they can. Yeah, absolutely.
I thought they would handle the Bruins a little bit more handily. But you know what? They got the job done. That's all that matters. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's a $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and so much more. Go visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit the like button on the video. Subscribe if you have not subscribed. Ring the bell to get notified when new episodes go up. If you're listening on the podcast app, 5-star ratings and reviews. Always appreciated around here. We're talking about the parity part of this and whether the Heat can get back into it. And I can't help but think, I'm watching these playoffs, and the Pacers, man. Most improbable conference finals participant in how long? It feels like a while.
Last year, I guess.
What do you mean?
The
Heat?
Year with Miami.
I guess. Yeah. I get people, but still, even the expectations for Miami. The Heat are feared, right? Like they have a track record. It's not the Indiana Pacers, man. Like a team that played no defense all season long, was banged up going into the playoffs, got healthy mid playoffs, and made this run. And I'm telling you, that Andrew Nembhard 3 at the end of Game 3 is the most consequential shot of the playoffs. Because if he doesn't make that ridiculous, bumbling, fumbling shot, the Knicks go up 3-0, and they probably win that series in 5 or 6 games. And instead, you've got what happened here. And so
a lot more grit and tenacity that I think a lot of people gave him credit for. And certainly, they didn't show it earlier in the season. They didn't show that for most of the regular season. But you know what? They've been able to capitalize. And to your point, they got some good shots. They've been healthy, and here they are now. And
a big part of it is they were the team that got the 6th seed. This race for the 6th seed. It feels like that was forever ago that the Miami Heat were playing basketball and trying to get into the playoffs. But the race for the 6th seed was a very real thing with a couple of weeks left in the season. And the Heat drop a few games at the end of the year against these Pacers, which was the most important game, Sunday, April 7th. We all remember it. They lose in Indiana by 2 points. That was a huge loss for this team. They have a loss against Dallas late in the year, losses against Golden State and Philadelphia late in the season. If you win a couple of those games, you beat the Pacers in that game, they're the team. The Heat would be the team with the number 6 seed playing a Giannis-less Bucks in the first round, a banged-up Bucks team in the first round.
Yeah.
You're playing a banged-up Knicks team in the second round.
Yeah.
Not to do the what-if thing, but what if? You know, it feels like this could have been the Heat. Now you're playing the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, I would not have given the Heat a very good chance against the Celtics because they were going to just still be banged up, right? Jimmy Butler, if he's not in the play-in tournament, Kelly Oubre doesn't land on his knee. He's healthy for the first round, but it felt like somebody was always getting hurt at some point for this team. So who knows how this thing actually plays out? But it feels like this could have. It speaks to how open, I guess, the Eastern Conference is. I don't know.
Well, you hear Eric Spoelstra talk about it, and it's an interesting premise. Like he mentioned this, I think it was in summation of the first round series versus Boston that Miami has typically gotten better as the playoffs move on. They learn more, they tweak things, they kind of grow despite whatever health issues.
We've seen that with the Pacers this year. That's a real thing. We've seen it with the Timberwolves.
So the idea is that had they, let's say, been in the 6th seed, they would have been okay or just good enough to beat the Bucks, probably, given their injuries and everything else like that. And they would have advanced to a Knicks team who's, I mean, again, with Miami's physicality, the idea, I think, is that New York probably would have crumbled a lot sooner. Like, I mean, given Miami's overall physicality, and maybe it would have worked against the Heat, but even in that matchup, I think Miami would have still been able to impose their will a little bit more clearly, and that team would have probably broken down to injury. Like OG Anunoby would have been the X factor, but we saw how many games he missed, and I think it would have been Miami would have probably won that series. Had they been able to continue to evolve over the course of the playoffs and then maybe face this Boston Celtics team at full strength, if Miami had been at full strength, and given that Kristaps Porzingis is going to miss a couple games in this series, could Miami have been able to replicate last year's success and advance all the way to the NBA Finals? It seems much more likely, but they put themselves in a bad position.
They did, and that's the
because
point.
of everything they did. Yeah,
that's the point. Is you toy around with the regular season too much and you get bit in the ass, and that's what happened with the Heat. And they lose those really important games late in the year, and instead of even having this opportunity to take advantage of injuries and make this run, instead, you're the team that has to play 2 more games. Your best player gets hurt in that play-in tournament week, and then you have to play the best team in the conference in the opening round. And that's the point. And that's why this whole idea of the Heat have, it's so funny. They do the exact same thing a year ago. Take advantage of some injuries, make that run to the finals, and the Heat have they proved that the regular season doesn't matter, and that's sort of the narrative coming out of that. And by the way, the Heat would always tell you that they didn't prove anything about the regular season.
Right.
And it was a wholly ridiculous concept that I rejected from the moment it started as a storyline. And then they do the exact same thing this year, aren't able to take advantage of those same injury type of things and situational things, and they lose in the first round. And they're like, well, now everybody's like, well, that's why you take the regular season seriously. And it's like, I've been here, dude, and so have the Heat. The regular season matters. You have to position yourself to a point. You don't have to necessarily get the number 1 seed. It doesn't matter if you win 67 games. That's the part. But don't play the extra games. Put yourself in a position to take advantage. And I do think that the Heat, they're not they've never been a dynasty per se, but this era of the Heat, or like the Pittsburgh Steelers a little bit, or the Baltimore Ravens in the NFL, like these teams that are just always in it. They're never really the favorite, but they're just always in the playoffs, and you put yourself in the playoffs in a position to say, you know what? We caught some breaks. We made some 3-pointers. We got an Andrew Nembhard ridiculous game winner at the end of game 3. We caught some breaks. We caught some injury luck. Next thing you know, you're in the conference finals. Next thing you know, you're in the NBA finals. And I do think that this team has mostly been that. And that's why they've had that success. They just failed in doing that this year and putting themselves in that position this year. And I think for next year, it's just about putting yourself in position again like that.
No, I can't disagree. I'm just, even as we're having this conversation, you look at what happened over the regular season, and I know a lot of people listening to this show or watching it are going to be like debating about how important it is to make trades. And that's the most basic common denominator response is like, you know what, this roster didn't work, blow it up, make trades, acquire said superstar, etc. I don't know that there's a path to that. I mean, I don't discount what Miami can do, because they've always been able to surprise us as media, even surprise a fan, etc. But I don't know that those kind of large changes are necessarily going to take place this summer. But just in terms of staying healthy and everything else like that, you wonder what they could have done differently in order to just improve their chances a little bit more. I don't know. It was a strange season, and it just didn't work out for Miami. And I know that's kind of, for a lot of fans, it's probably all in the rearview mirror. It's all about what happens next. But you kind of have to take a step back to look at what didn't work and what did work, and whether or not Miami could still have been a playoff contender had they been healthy. So the issue is, how do you stay healthy? How do you have players be available for more games so that they could play at a higher level? And it might be, eventually you might get to that point that we've made, where you have to improve the roster so that you're not working as hard, so that you can stay healthy, so that you're able to actually go out there and play games. All these things are interconnected somehow. So there's no one easy answer.
Exactly.
It's not just acquiring Donovan Mitchell, because if Donovan Mitchell gets, if they trade for Donovan somehow and he misses 40 games, guess what? You're back to square zero. It's not even square one. You're back to exactly where you were this past season. So that's not exactly the answer either. So it's all about,
injuries could ruin anybody's season, right? I mean, it ruined 2 Milwaukee Bucks seasons in a row. Injuries are a real thing, but you gotta at least position yourself to, when you're healthy, be able to make your own luck, and when you are healthy, be able to compete with the top teams in the league, which the Heat haven't been able to do. I mean, they got wiped off the floor by Denver in the finals last year, and they got wiped off the floor by Boston this year. I know they were out a lot of their top players, but it just feels like you kind of have to do both things. To your point, everything's connected here, but you got to find a way to stay healthy. And I do think a big part of that is changing the roster, because if you have a bunch of players who tend to get hurt all the time, that doesn't really change. You sometimes it is just, and maybe it looks like just moving deck chairs if it's not the superstar trade, but sometimes moving deck chairs does just change the feng shui of the space, and you have a little bit of better luck, right? And that it might just be that.
All of a sudden you get more lighting, it looks more spacious. It's like, if I move that chair to the corner, all of a sudden it looks like I have a much bigger living room, etc. Yeah, so that's exactly what it could be for Miami. Thanks for roster changes. I love
feng shui roster changes. That might be the theme of this season if it's not Donovan Mitchell. Well, by the way, maybe this is a topic for a different show. It certainly is, but increasing buzz that he might just stay in Cleveland. So that's not great. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Follow us on your podcast app.